There's one more way that we can bring analysis, that we can put our model to work for us, and that is doing the bookkeeping, doing diagnosis of system level errors. There are two classes of errors that we can look for at the architectural level: completeness errors and integrity errors. Completeness errors, think of traceability. So I've got a document that documents requirements, but I've got a requirement that does not trace into my solution architecture. That's a completeness error. I've got a requirement that does not trace to verification. I've got an entity that does not have a description. These types of things where somebody has not completed an aspect of the design, either because of your systems engineering plan or because they have violated a systems engineering principle. Completeness checks. The other type of checks are design integrity checks. So for example, if we have a function allocated to a component, a different function allocated to a different component, and those functions exchange an item, there must be a connecting link between those components, and the item must be transferred by that link. Design integrity checks, GENESYS will help you catch that that item is not transferred, or that item is transferred by a link that does not flow between those components. It is keeping alignment in your design. If I come to the fast food model, here we've got our fast food model, and let's just look at the completeness checks, the diagnostics for some of the things that we've just created. We've created two requirements: serve chicken nuggets, serve fried tenders. If I look at the diagnostics tab, I see I've got a number of errors. I've got an origin. I don't know where this requirement came from. The entity is at the leaf level, but does not specify or basis of. So in other words, it doesn't trace. Where are these levels coming from? If I come back to my project, at the project property sheet, I specify what completeness checker I want at one design integrity checker that I want. I've got multiple levels. Oftentimes, early in the program, I turn these off, or I set it to completeness checker level 1, which is going to check very basic things. Do my entities have descriptions? Things like that. And then I will increase the completeness checker as time goes on, because I want to tighten up the rules. So let's go back and let's look at how we would then use these checkers. So chicken nuggets, so here in the chicken nuggets, I'm fine on a design integrity perspective, but I don't trace through. How could I solve that? Well, this is computed on the fly. So if I come down and say, okay, I'm going to trace this into my model, and a functional requirement is the basis of a function, I could trace to an existing function or I could create a new one. The moment I create a new one and I establish that relationship, this is going to go away. This error condition is going to go away. Good. So I could walk through my entities and I could find all the ones with errors. That's a little slow. One of the things that I often do is use a filter here in the entity list, and I look for those with diagnostic errors. And I see my entities that have diagnostic errors. I could click in and I could resolve them, trace them to verification requirements, etc. Let's look at a design integrity error. So design integrity errors are looking across the design and looking for something that is not properly aligned. My decomposition levels are not properly set up. I haven't followed the rules of decomposition. My behavioral and physical aren't aligned. If I go into the component class to look at my components, and I look at sys.1, my building, I will see that from a completeness check, it's done everything, but it has a design integrity error. In other words, at the top level, it has a link to an external, but as we've moved down in levels of decomposition, that has not been accounted for. That's a decompositional, a vertical integrity error. The example I gave with functions exchanging items, items not being mapped to links, would be a horizontal error. I could solve that the same way, but let's come back to the key thing about these. These design checks are user extensible. You can tailor them to your process, your needs. How would I do that? Again, at the completeness checker or the integrity checker level, I could open a script, I could look at it, and I'm just going to actually, let me not look at it here. Let me look at it in the script itself. I'm going to, rather than changing it, I'm going to navigate to it and show you what one looks like. So if I look at the checkers, if I look at checker 1, the simplest level, I could open this script. Now, this may be Greek to each of us, but it's effectively a Visual Basic script. And if I scroll down and begin looking at it, I will see it's walking through my database and it's branching out based upon level. Okay, these particular checks are, you get the right one, here's the helper. So regardless of what level of the schema, the consistency checkers align with your schema. If I open one of these and edit it, I can look and I can see things like, if the class is anything but defined term, make sure it has a description. And then I get into per class checks. If I have an issue at level 1, has somebody told me who created this issue, who logged the concern? If it's a requirement, are there typing rules, etc. The last thing that I'll show here on diagnostics very quickly is we showed that we could filter. This is also a good case where we can run a report. So down at the report level, if I expand this, one of the reports I use frequently is the diagnostic table report. GENESYS is currently loading all reports from the repository. Select diagnostics. I'm going to ask for the table report, right-click and run. As it runs, it's going to ask what scope would I like. I can run it over the entire project, a package, a class. This is a relatively quick report to run once it loads. I'm going to ask to run it across everything. It will ask me where to save it. I'm going to save mine to the desktop. It's going to ask for that scope. And here's my dialog. I'll just run it against everything. And we'll see a tabular representation. This report only shows those entities that have issues. So if I open my result, here we go. I could now look at what entities had issues and what issue they are. Under each table, I see the entities with the issue, but I see what the error is along with the description.